on the mission. And from 1978, I was the architect. Conservation was a word. Archaeology was very developed, but conservation was not a professional issue. But I was doing conservation, not really knowing things, and I was the architect and co-excavator of the Citadel of Jerusalem. I told some people yesterday during our tour. He came to the excavations of the Citadel, and he saw that we are using in conservation as mortar, using modern cement. So modern cement, yeah, we mixed it with pigments and so on, so it doesn't look gray, but just visually. He said, "You're not supposed to use modern cement. It's bad for conservation. It's so on. You have to use lime." Well, when I was a little child, on every construction site there was a lime, a kind of a pond for slaking lime. But we don't have lime anymore. Who is using lime? Said it's impossible. So this was my first lesson by Lemaire telling me there are professional issues that you have to learn. Later I went to ICROM and I came back and people then complained. Before you went to ICROM, everything was okay. Now you came back, everything is wrong. And we did find lime and so on. The other thing he told me once on the same site, because of the citadel with towers, there were no stairs going up to the towers, to the second upper floors. So we installed modern stairs, not of stone, but metal and wood. He looked at it, he didn't like it. He said, it doesn't look good. I told him, but it's reversible. And reversible is fine. He said, well, there's a limit of how many reversible objects you can put in a historic building and it would still look good. So the issue was how it looks, not so much whether it's right or wrong. And then one year he couldn't come for some reason. He called me up, he asked me, could you go to those excavations and write a report for me and send me the report? Then I saw that my report to him was, in a way, part of my later career. I was already infected by this disease of conservation, but not really knowing what it is. So I think Raymond Lemaire gave me a little bit of the direction. It was a real honor to work with him, mainly on the theoretical issues. So it was kind of only much later when I was also became involved with ICOMOS and so on, I realized that I was in contact with history, with the history of our profession. I'm still very thankful. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Giora. So now we'll move on to the topic of the conference, and we'll hope it will work. So I think, only click on something in this screen. I need to find my mouse first. Here it is. Okay, the floor is yours, Bogusław.
It would be better if you. Dear colleagues, I'm starting with that slide because, as you know, ICOMOS is celebrating that great anniversary. The first assembly was held in Poland 60 years ago. And because of that, I'm convinced that the topic we are discussing should be the crucial topic for our discipline. And because of that, we decided to speak during this conference about the evolution of the theory of conservation. So I would like, before I start my presentation, I would like to express our gratitude to the organizers of the conference, Faculty of Architecture, and especially Claudine. She's the perfect organizer. So thanks a lot for that. Dear colleagues, I would like to convince you that after 60 years, we are in a critical point in the development of the theory of conservation. And because of that, we selected a collection of papers to be presented during this conference, but also we invited colleagues representing not only ICOMOS for a special session about the development of the theory of conservation, and we also organized a special session tomorrow for the proposal to discuss the proposals of changes in preparation of the doctrinal text. So all these topics are somehow connected and are important for that topic, development and evolution of the theory of conservation. So it seems to me that during this conference, two topics should be discussed. Firstly, the role of ICOMOS in the evolution of conservation theory, obvious topic, but also the second topic, the roles that conservation theory play in the activities of ICOMOS. It seems to me that those topics are interconnected and worth to be discussed together. But let's start with the first topic, the role of ICOMOS in shaping conservation theory. And the question on the topic is not, the question is easy, but the answer is not easy because it is not obvious which criterion should be discussed evaluating the development of the conservation theory. Because in conservation theory, there is no reference point, there is no objective measure how to assess the progress or development of conservation theory. Of course, the role of ICOMOS is without any doubts huge because of the scale of activities conducted by ICOMOS. ICOMOS is the largest organization dealing with the heritage protection, over 10,000 members, over 100 national committees, 13 international scientific committees. From that perspective, ICOMOS is the greatest, is the biggest agora forum when the formation of views and the flow of ideas takes place. When we summarize our activities, it means that we could discuss about thousands of articles, conferences, contributions, and documents co-created and shaped, which shaped theory of conservation. But trying to be brief, it seems to me that it is possible to summarize those activities into three main the scale of the discussion is also great because we have the discussion on the global level. ICOMOS is organizing the general assemblies and also continental meetings. The second level, we have the international scientific committees. So we have the chance to gather in the scale, even the whole world discussing very specific topics. And of course, we have more than hundreds of the national committees. So it is possible to organize the discussion on that scale, on those different levels. So without any doubts, ICOMOS is the biggest international forum to discuss the problems operating since 60 years. But it seems to me that finally, it is also possible to take into account the one criterion to assess the development of the conservation theory, that would be the production of the doctrinal text, because in our domain, there is no other form to formulate the theory of conservation instead of doctrinal text. So from the perspective of those 60 years, it seems to me that we could outnumber, of course, that's a very general summary, 3 big stages. The first stage, when ICOMOS adopted Venice Charter, as you remember, Venice Charter has been adopted 1964, and during that conference, the participants, they decided to meet again a year after to establish ICOMOS. And as I mentioned, it has happened in Warsaw, 1960, by the same people. And what is the most important element of that, that period and that idea can be called universalism of the conservation theory. Those people, they believed that it is possible to describe the whole theory in one document, and that document could be applied to all monuments. And the second phase, they decided that it is necessary to create a specific documents, generally speaking, devoted to the typological group of monuments. As we saw yesterday, example of that was the Washington Charter, the charter devoted to the specific group of the heritage. And I call that period fragmentation of the theory of conservation. The theory was fragmented, divided into small pieces devoted to the particular problems. Of course, not only typological group of monuments, but also activities, and in some cases to specific regions. We have, for example, Giora Charter as the beginning, but also other countries or regions, they are trying to formulate such documents. For example, we have the colleagues from China, there are also China principles. So the second period, that was the fragmentation of the conservation theory. And after that, we're talking about so-called paradigm shift. We're thinking that we have 2 main stages, but it seems to me that it is necessary to indicate the third stage, that ICOMOS is not the only creator of doctrinal documents. It's only the partner of creation of those documents. Those documents, generally speaking, are devoted to the rights of the stakeholders and for the use of the heritage. And it seems to me that it is possible to call that period as the individualization of conservation theory. It means that everybody means society, even individual people or country or place, they could decide about how the heritage, their heritage would be protected, not monuments, the heritage. So because of that, I'm calling that period individualism, but frankly speaking, it must be called voluntarism. So I was trying to describe that stages in that form, answering what is the subject of the protection, what the scope of the activities, leading values, purpose of monuments protection, because it's also different, methodological or principles of the operation. And finally, I gave here the examples of those documents. What is important, what is already underlined in the final stage in which we are now, we have, for example, narrow document of authenticity, we have operational guidelines, we have very famous Faro Convention, we have so-called Hull recommendation. In all these documents, we treat all these documents together with the Venice Charter and also with other documents, but as a matter of fact, we are only in those document partners. We are not a leading force for creation of those documents. Council of Europe, UNESCO, and other organizations are co-partners also for the NARA documents of authenticity, which we treat as our document, but as a matter of fact, that was because it was needed for the World Heritage movement. So from another perspective, in the first stage, ICOMOS defined the universal standard. So generally speaking, the leading force, they were specialists. And the main obvious goal was the protection of historical values. And in the second phase, also specialists, they defined the rules how to cope with the defined groups of the monuments. Protection and use, already use, was taken into account. And in the current state, ICOMOS is a member of the coalition of organizations and institutions to fight for the rights of the stakeholders and use of the heritage. And there is same position, specialists and non-specialists. So very important aspect and very important goal of those activities is contemporary use of the heritage for the needs of the stakeholders. So what is the role of the conservation theory?
That there is a problem that the people online don't see the presentation. So I will just, I think this should have been done. Maxime, could someone have it? Je vais pas regarder quel. Does it work now for the people online? Do you see the screen?
Yes.
Yes. What did you say? It works? Ah, okay. Thank you. Sorry for that.
It works. It works.
Okay, so briefly, the second question, what is the role of conservation theory in ICOMOS activities? Of course, there is the interrelation with the aspects I just presented. In the first and the second stage of ICOMOS existence, the conservation theory and of course creation of the doctrinal text was very important, became the main mission of ICOMOS existence. But currently, in that period, existence of ICOMOS, the theory is less important because nowadays we are discussing not only about the protection and conservation, but about the use, about the presentation, about the accessibility, and other aspects. Of course, the doctrinal are still created by group of the specialists because the group of specialists are working. So every year we're producing additional doctrinal documents. However, the content, the rules of those doctrinal documents are somehow cancelled in practice by the other doctrinal documents that gave the power to the stakeholders, to the circumstances, to the variety of interpretation of authenticity, and so on and so on. So from that perspective, the protection of from the protection of the historical values, this is the negative process and should be reversed. Maybe you could ask whether my opinion is proper or not proper, but as the argument for that, I will recall that action which just now started. Nowadays, ICOMOS started the process of the renaming of the doctrinal documents. We are going to discuss about the topic tomorrow. Our colleagues, our bureau, our rulers, they decided not to use anymore the name the doctrinal text. That name would be replaced by the international recommendation or reference text. And I don't know what is the justification for that names, but for sure the new name means that those documents would be weaker, because the doctrinal text in the protection of monuments, obviously they have two functions: informative, which is obvious, but also normative function. And for that normative function, the name of the document is crucial, but because the same content has completely different connotation if the name is different. You could imagine the same content, the same information, if we call as a note, as information, as a norm, as a declaration, or as the order, totally different connotation. So the name of the doctrinal documents contributes to its validity and status, not only, but also. So how we should interpret that action that ICOMOS itself is trying to change the name? Frankly speaking, I don't know why. And that change will radically change the importance of the theory of conservation. And from my perspective, the proposed changes regarding doctrinal text will lead to a change in the ways of the protecting of monuments. And I don't know whether you knew about that process just started. Probably most of you are members of ICOMOS, and that process is already finished. I was asking to present our opinion on that topic, and because of that, we are organizing tomorrow that meeting. But I am afraid that decision has been already taken. That's my prediction. So absolutely, from my perspective, it is the road leading to the weakened position of the heritage protection, and that action started in ICOMOS. That's something astonishing. So conclusions. To sum up the answer on the questions which I started. The role of ICOMOS in shaping conservation theory was absolutely crucial. ICOMOS co-created the evolution of conservation theory, and also in reverse, the importance of conservation theory caused development and importance of ICOMOS. Second conclusion, the role of conservation theory in ICOMOS activities is decreasing because the reduction of the role of the theory in treatment of monuments. And I'm afraid that weakness of the conservation theory caused the weakness of ICOMOS finally. And because of that, it seems to me that it is possible to formulate the third conclusion, that ICOMOS still should discuss how the conservation theory and doctrinal text they contribute to the protection of monuments. I'm absolutely convinced that without the theory, it is not possible. We don't have another skeleton, any other basis to protect the heritage. And if finally we lose that theory of conservation, would be no place for the ICOMOS existence. So we have to remember about that. So I do hope that during our discussion, during our conference, we would be able to formulate a very strong position, very strong voice on that topic. So please join that activities, because as I stated in the title of my presentation, we are in the critical point of development of the conservation theory. Let's do the turning point without any linkage to the politics. Thanks a lot.